player proposal before Christmas, and they have still not heard a peep from the league. The league believes the proposal didn't warrant a response since it wasn't that different from the past ones the union was. I cannot read today. The union has submitted. And instead, sources told ESPN it's waiting for the players to submit what it would consider a more realistic proposal. So basically, the league is saying
that's not frustration you're hearing. That's genuine concern from someone who's been covering this league closely. Because right now, we're watching something unprecedented unfold in the WNBA. The collective bargaining agreement deadline passed on January 9th, and 3 weeks later, the two sides aren't just far apart. They're not even talking. And with every day that passes, the chances of having a normal 2025 season slip further away.
It's 4 ways a new deal can get done. But the part that stood out to me in this article says, as the deadline passed on January 9th, the sides ushered in a period called status quo, where the conditions of the 2020 deal remain in effect. In the 3 weeks since, the stalemate has continued. The Women's National Basketball Players Association is still awaiting an official response from the league since sending it a proposal a month ago. And if you guys remember, the WNBA sent...
Here's where we stand. According to ESPN's Alexa Philippou, the Women's National Basketball Players Association sent their proposal to the league a month ago, 30 days. And the league's response? Radio silence, not a counteroffer, not a rejection, nothing. But here's the twist that makes this even more revealing. According to league sources who spoke to ESPN, they believe the players' proposal doesn't warrant a response because it's not different enough from previous submissions. Translation: the league is waiting for the players to blink first. The players want a 30% gross revenue split. The league is offering 70% of net revenue, which sounds generous until you understand the difference between gross and net. That gap? That's where $700 million lives, according to leaked projections.
On social media. So when they thought that the league's proposal was a slap in the face, they told us that. When they felt like the league's proposal was like putting lipstick on a pig, the WNBA told us that. They let us know on social media, and they continue to do that, and they continue to do that in different interviews and articles that they do. Now, from the WNBA side, we have just been getting little nuggets sprinkled in kind of these articles that we're hearing. It's like leaked information, but it's probably purposefully leaked information. But we're not hearing specifically, like, we're not even entertaining the players' proposal. But that's kind of what they're saying here.
Now watch how this information warfare is playing out. The players have been incredibly vocal on social media. They've called the league's proposals a slap in the face. They've said it's like putting lipstick on a pig. They organized a rat protest outside the NBA store. Every frustration, every grievance, they've taken it public. And that strategy worked initially. Public opinion rallied behind them. Who doesn't want to see WNBA players get paid more? But here's what's shifting. The league hasn't responded on social media at all. Instead, they're selectively leaking information through established media channels. That $700 million figure, that came from a leak. The claim that the players' proposal doesn't warrant a response, another leak. And it's working. Public sentiment is starting to turn.
Figure it out, ladies, but we're not even going to entertain this. And that to me is a very bold line in the sand. As the season creeps closer, and with so much to accomplish before the ball can be tipped, the clock seems to be ticking on the two sides coming together on a deal. And multiple sources have told ESPN that there's an understanding that the only way to find a resolution is to find a compromise. That's literally what a negotiation is, one player told ESPN. I'm gonna push back on this just a little bit, because I do think that both sides need to find a compromise, obviously. However, if we look at what their deal was in 2020 and we look at the current deal on the table from the league's side, max salary players would make over $1 million. Minimum salary is now going to be higher than the maximum salary was in the last CBA deal. Like, there is actually...
Let's put the actual offer on the table in perspective, because context matters here. Under the 2020 CBA, the maximum salary was $228,000. The league's current proposal would push max salaries over $1 million. The minimum salary under the new proposal would be higher than the maximum salary was just 5 years ago. Players would also get a 70% share of net revenue, which includes broadcast deals, sponsorships, and ticket sales after expenses. To an outside observer, That looks like massive progress. But to the Players Association, it's still not enough. And that disconnect is where this entire negotiation is stuck. The players aren't comparing this offer to the 2020. They're comparing it to what they believe the league is actually making. And that's where the demand to open the books comes in. Because without seeing the actual financials, how do you know if 70% of net revenue is fair or if it's an accounting trick?
Right now, maybe the players are the ones who aren't compromising. It seems like the league has definitely come a long way. The article goes on and says that they need to come to a mutual understanding on revenue sharing. And I think that's the thing. I'm going to reiterate it. We've talked about it in previous videos. When it comes to the revenue sharing, the WNBA is very different than every other major sports league. The WNBA owns 40% of their league. Another 40% is owned by the NBA. And then another 16% is owned by outside investors. And so it's not as easy for the WNBA just to give up gross revenue like they're talking about. And from my understanding, if the WNBA is actually being honest in these negotiations, and we don't know, we really don't know. No one is seeing.
Here's what makes the WNBA's ownership structure uniquely complicated. The WNBA itself owns 40% of the league. The NBA owns another 40%. Outside investors hold 16%. This isn't like the NBA or NFL where teams are independently owned, and the league office just facilitates agreements. The WNBA has to answer to multiple stakeholders, including the NBA, which has its own financial priorities. When the players demand a gross revenue split, they're essentially asking the league to give up money before covering operational costs. That includes arena rentals, travel, staff salaries, marketing, and everything else that keeps 12 teams running. The league's position is that if they agree to a gross revenue split at the level the players want, the league becomes financially unsustainable, not unprofitable for 1 year, but $700 million in the red over the life of the deal. Now, is that number real? The players don't think so. They want proof, and the league's refusal to provide detailed financials is creating a trust gap that's getting wider by the day.
Their bullet point is to find a middle ground on housing. This housing stuff to me honestly just feels like it's just details. I'm sorry, if they're fighting over housing, if that's what it comes down to, I think I think none of that matters. I think it's only the revenue split. If both sides can't come to an agreement because of housing, the league doesn't deserve to be a thing. I'm sorry, that's just ridiculous. The salaries are going up. The league has proposed that they're not going to provide housing with the salaries going up to where they are. But of course, there is always something where 10-day contracts, hardship contracts, if you're getting traded, all of these things, they happen in every single league. The league is going to help with housing to a certain extent. If they
ESPN's reporting reveals 4 potential paths to getting a deal done, and one of them is particularly telling. They suggest the Players Association should start emphasizing their wins instead of framing everything as inadequate. That might sound like media criticism, but it's actually strategic advice, because right now the players have painted themselves into a rhetorical corner. They've been so consistent in calling the league's offers insulting that if they eventually accept something close to the current proposal, what's the narrative? Do they admit they were exaggerating? Do they claim they forced the league to improve the offer even if the numbers barely change? This is the problem with negotiating in public. Every statement becomes a position you have to defend later. And here's the uncomfortable reality. When this deal eventually gets done, and it will get done, the players and the league are going to have to work together. Cathy Engelbert isn't going anywhere. The team owners aren't changing. So every social media post calling them greedy, every protest comparing them to rats, that's all creating a working relationship that's going to be toxic for years.
And then this last bullet point on how they can get a deal done is reestablish trust. In 2020, Commissioner Cathy Engelbert and Union President Neko Ogumake sat side by side and announced an 8-year CBA. They both wore blue, Ogumake in a royal blue dress and Engelbert in a navy blazer, as they shared the news of their agreement on Good Morning America. Could you see that happening now? I'm just not so sure. And that's what I kind of go back to, they've been trashing Cathy. However you feel about Cathy, she said she's not going anywhere. And if she truly doesn't go anywhere, what is that relationship going to be? And then Union Vice President Breanna Stewart told ESPN she'd like to meet face to face with the league's owners, a sentiment other sources have echoed as a potential route to consider. Allowing the key stakeholders to engage in a dialogue and hear each other out directly and not through layers of lawyers and middlemen could be more productive and helping break the stalemate and get a deal across the finish line. At some point, enough is enough.
Union Vice President Brianna Stewart told ESPN she wants to meet face-to-face with the league's owners, not the negotiators, not the lawyers, the actual owners. And that's revealing because it suggests the players believe the people in the negotiating room don't have the authority to make real concessions. They want to go over their heads directly to the decision makers. That's either a brilliant strategy or a massive miscalculation. If the owners agree to meet and nothing changes, the players will have exhausted their leverage. But if the owners refuse to meet, it confirms the players' suspicion that the league's negotiating team is just stalling. Meanwhile, the clock is ticking. Training camps should be starting in less than 2 months. The draft is scheduled for April. Free agency needs to happen. Trades need to be processed. And none of that can happen without a CBA in place. The league is currently operating under status quo, which means the 2020 agreement's terms remain in effect. But that's not a sustainable long-term solution.
That's the update that we have there. Nobody is still talking, but it's, like I said in my last video, it's definitely time to panic. The clock is running out. There are so many things to do during this off season. This has just been such a mess. And something that I failed to mention in my last episode is World Cup is also this summer. There's arguably the most popular sport in the world. Not even arguably. The most popular sport in the world is having their biggest event this summer, and it's happening in the United States of America. Not saying that soccer fans are in the same category as WNBA fans, but there are other things happening this summer. Baseball also is the most popular than it's ever been. Baseball is starting up soon. That also goes through the summer. The WNBA isn't going to have this summer of just all eyes on the W because there's nothing else to watch. They're playing with fire right now. Both sides are playing with fire and it's not looking good. And I just don't understand how anybody can think that it would be okay to play around with the momentum and the popularity that you currently have, because everything is dwindling. And if you don't think it's dwindling, reality check. We can look, I don't even want to bring it up or share it here, but look at the Unrivaled numbers. They're really bad. If anybody thinks that the W can just survive not having a season because players are just going to go play an Unrivaled, sure, you can continue to be a better basketball player, but the fans are not going to follow. There's a million things to watch this summer.
Here's what everyone involved seems to be ignoring. The WNBA doesn't have the luxury of a work stoppage right now. This isn't the NBA in the 90s when the league was established and could survive a lockout. The WNBA just had its biggest year ever. Caitlin Clark's rookie season brought unprecedented attention. Attendance records were shattered. Broadcast ratings hit all-time highs. Merchandise sales exploded. This was the breakthrough moment the league has been building toward for 28 years. And now they're risking it over a negotiation where both sides are too proud to compromise. The FIFA World Cup is happening this summer in the United States. That's the biggest sporting event on the planet, and it's going to dominate sports media coverage for weeks. Baseball is more popular than it's been in years, with young stars like Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge drawing massive audiences. The NBA playoffs will run through June. The WNBA isn't going to have a clear runway like they did last summer. Unrivaled, the 3-on-3 league that's supposed to be the WNBA's safety net, is averaging under 200,000 viewers per game. That's not a typo. 200,000 for comparison. Caitlin Clark's regular season games were averaging over 1 million viewers. The idea that WNBA players can just sit out a season and maintain their momentum by playing in Unrivaled is delusional. The hardcore fans will follow. The casual fans who just discovered the WNBA last year, they'll move on, and getting them back will take years, not months. So here's the reality both sides need to accept. The players have legitimate grievances about revenue sharing and transparency. The league has legitimate concerns about financial sustainability and the complexity of their ownership structure. But neither side's position matters if there's no season to play. The Players Association's strategy of public pressure worked initially, but it's starting to backfire as fans see the actual numbers on the table. The league's strategy of selective leaks and strategic silence is maintaining their position, but it's also making them look stubborn and dismissive. A compromise isn't weakness, it's the only path forward. The players need to acknowledge that a 70% net revenue share with max salaries over $1 million represents massive progress, even if it's not everything they want. The league needs to provide more financial transparency and explain why a gross revenue split would actually threaten the league's existence. Not just claim it would, Because here's what happens if they don't figure this out soon. Training camps get delayed. The draft gets postponed. Free agency becomes chaos. The season starts late, if it starts at all. And all that momentum, from 2024, all that attention Caitlin Clark brought, all those new fans who finally started paying attention, gone. The players will lose salary. The league will lose revenue. The fans will lose interest. And the networks that just paid record amounts for broadcast rights will start questioning whether the WNBA is a reliable investment. This isn't just about money anymore. It's about whether the WNBA can capitalize on the biggest opportunity in its history, or whether pride and stubbornness will waste it. Both sides keep saying they want what's best for the league. Now they need to prove it, not with social media posts or strategic leaks, but with an actual agreement that gets players on the court and fans in the seats. The deadline has passed, the season is approaching, and right now, nobody's blinking. Someone needs to before it's too late.